facing the police every single day.
Northport Police Department. Internal Affairs / Division Level. Preliminary Investigative Summary. 2. City Manager Peter Lear. From, Inspector W. Micheal Pelfrey ID #330. Date, May 1, 2018. Re, I/a case number, 2018-01. Investigation. A complainant. Chief Kevin Vespaya. 4980 City Hall Boulevard. Northport, Florida 34286. 941-429-7306. B. Employee, S. Involved. Assistant Chief Micheal Pelfrey. 4980 City Hall Boulevard. Northport, Florida 34286. 941-429-7378. See complaint description. On 2 separate occasions Assistant Chief Pelfrey was given directives by Chief Vespaya, which he failed to carry out. When questioned by Vespaya about the failure to complete the assignments, Pelfrey allegedly told the chief that they had been inadvertent. However, Pelfrey, in a meeting, told the Human Resources Director and Human Resources Manager that one of the directives given to him by Chief Vespaya, he had intentionally disobeyed, believing them to be an unlawful order. This is contrary to what he had told the chief. It also raises the potential for additional charges regarding truthfulness. D. Policy violation. 1701.02, v. 34, Insubordination Level 4, 2 counts, to wit, personnel shall promptly obey any lawful orders of a superior. This will include order relayed from a superior by personnel of the same or lesser classification. Members shall willfully observe and obey the lawful verbal and written rules, duties, policies, procedures and practices of this organization. They also shall subordinate their personal preferences and work priorities to the lawful verbal and written rules, duties, policies, procedures, and practices of this agency. Members shall willfully perform all lawful duties and tasks assigned by supervisors and superior-ranked personnel. Direct, tacit, or constructive refusal to do so constitutes insubordination. 2701.02, v. 17, Untruthfulness in an official proceeding, Level 5 violation. Members shall speak truthfully in any official proceeding, including, but not limited to, criminal or civil court proceeding, depositions, administrative hearings, and administrative investigations. E-witnesses. Civilian. 1 Deborah Hope Human Resources Manager. City of Northport. 4970 City Hall Boulevard. Northport, Florida 34286. 941-429-7219. 2 Christine McDade, Human Resources Director. City of Northport. 4970 City Hall Boulevard. Northport, Florida 34286. 941-429-7136. F. Investigation. On March 21, 2018, I received a written complaint from Chief of Police Kevin Vespaya regarding 2 specific incidents involving Assistant Chief Micheal Pelfrey, where he had given Pelfrey orders that he needed Pelfrey to carry out, and explained to Pelfrey his reasons why they were important and needed done as soon as possible. Neither directive given to Pelfrey was completed. When questioned why those orders were not carried out, Pelfrey was reported to have responded that they were inadvertent lapses of memory. Later, Chief Vespaya received information from Human Resources Director Christine McDade and Human Resources Manager Deborah Hope that in a meeting they had with Assistant Chief Pelfrey, he had admitted to them that he intentionally did not carry out one of the orders given to him by Chief Vespaya because he thought it was an unlawful order violating Officers' Bill of Rights and Internal Affairs policy as well as Florida state statute. This is in direct opposition to what Pelfrey had told Chief Vespaya. Chief Vespaya directed me to initiate an internal administrative investigation. Specifics of this complaint are as follows. On November 9, 2017, Chief Vespi was at the Knights Trail gun range for agency firearms qualifications. He observed an officer, Carter, with a loaded firearm approaching the firing line with no firearms instructor present. This is a violation of agency policy and the Knights Trail range policy. Chief Vespi telephoned and instructed Assistant Chief Pelfrey to meet with Captain Gary Arsenault, who supervises training and firearms instruction, and advise him of the incident to ensure there would be no reoccurrences. Later, Chief Vespi mentioned this incident to Captain Arsenault and inquired about the conversation he had supposedly held with the Assistant Chief. Captain Arsenault appeared surprised and told Chief Vespi that he knew nothing about the incident and the Assistant Chief had never met with him. Chief Vespi confronted Assistant Chief Pelfrey and asked why he had failed to carry out that directive. Assistant Chief Pelfrey allegedly relayed that had been inadvertent on his part. The second incident occurred on or about November 1, 2017. Chief Vespi, after conferring with Northport Police Use of Force Independent Consultant Roy Bedard, had directed that an internal affairs inquiry be opened regarding a use of force incident that had resulted in serious injury from a canine bite, IA case number 2017-12. Bedard recommended that IA be opened as an after-action investigation to validate that the actions taken were consistent with the Northport Police Department use of canine policy. This differs from a standard IA in that no complaint against any subject officers had been made. Chief Vespi instructed Assistant Chief Pelfrey to meet with the captains, who through the chain of command, would advise the officers involved that the IA was coming, the reason for it, so that the officers involved were not blindsided by the IA, thinking that charges were being filed against them. Chief Pelfrey failed to carry out this directive, resulting in consternation and extreme angst by the officers when they received the IA notices in their mailbox. When Chief Vespi questioned Assistant Chief Pelfrey about his failure to carry out this directive, Assistant Chief Pelfrey replied it was inadvertent and said he would take care of it right away. On or about March 12, 2018, Chief Vespi met with Human Resources Director Christine McDade and Human Resources Manager Deborah Hope to discuss his concerns with what he deemed as the continuing poor performance of Assistant Chief Pelfrey without any significant improvement. During that discussion, McDade and Hope related to Vespi that they had met with Assistant Chief Pelfrey about his concerns about what he felt was a worsening relationship between Chief Vespi and him. Pelfrey offered as one of his examples that Chief Vespi had given him an illegal order to meet with the captains about a soon-to-be-initiated K9 IA investigation, but that he, Pelfrey, intentionally refused to carry out that order because he felt it was a violation of Florida State Statute, Officer Bill of Rights, and NPPD policy. This was a direct opposite of what Vespi stated that Pelfrey had told him was the reason he failed to follow the directive, an inadvertent oversight. It should be noted that Assistant Chief Pelfrey failed to voice his concerns to Chief Vespi when he was given the directive about any possible violations of law and policy. Instead, Pelfrey chose to ignore the order. For the record, the directive/order given to Pelfrey by Vespi was not a violation of policy, law, or Officer Bill of Rights. It was given prior to the IA being initiated and no officer was being interrogated. Therefore, Officer Bill of Rights does not apply. On April 3, 2018 at 1130 HRS, I interviewed Human Resources Manager Deborah Hope in her office in the City Building, 4970 City Hall Boulevard, Northport, Florida. After placing her under oath, I took a taped sworn statement from Hope. She told me that during a meeting with Assistant Chief Pelfrey while discussing his concerns about his perceived issues with Chief Vespi, he admitted to McDade and Hope that he had intentionally refused to carry out the order to meet with the captains and inform them that an IA was coming due to the use of force incident mentioned above in this report. Pelfrey told them he thought it was an illegal order in violation of the Police Officer Bill of Rights, policy, and state law. Their other conversations were not narrowly related to the insubordination complaint. Nothing was said by Pelfrey regarding his failure to carry out the second directive, that being speaking with Captain Arsenault. When Chief Vespaya came to HR to meet with Manager Hope and Director McDade about the performance issues he was having with the Assistant Chief, Hope said that he related to them how Pelfrey had failed to carry out the aforementioned directives and had said it was inadvertent lapse of memory. At that time, both Hope and McDade told Chief Vespaya that Assistant Chief Pelfrey had discussed the same incident with them but had told them it was an intentional act. On April 4, 2018 at 1330 HRS. I met with Human Resources Director Christine McDade in her office in the Northport City building. I took a sworn tape testimony from her. McDade told me that on or about March 9, 2018, Manager Deborah Hope was meeting with Assistant Chief Pelfrey about his concerns over the working relationship with Chief Vespaya. Sometime during the meeting, Hope came to Director McDade's office and asked her to join the meeting, which she did. During the meeting, as Pelfrey described incidents between Chief Vespaya and him. He used as an example an order given to him by Vespaya, which he Pelfrey felt was a violation of FSS 112.532 Florida Officers' Bill of Rights. Pelfrey stated that he refused to carry out that order because he felt it would be a violation. No further information of interest that might be beneficial to this investigation came of the meeting. On March 12, 2018, Chief Vespaya met with Director McDade and Manager Hope about his issues with Assistant Chief Pelfrey's poor performance and lack of improvement after numerous consultations between the two. Two of the examples offered by Chief Vespaya was the aforementioned two directives that Pelfrey had failed to carry out and had offered an excuse of forgetfulness in nature. McDade and Hope told Chief Vespaya that Assistant Chief Pelfrey had discussed the same incidents but told them that he had intentionally refused to carry out one specific command, that to notify the captains about the IA investigation/after-action inquiry about to be initiated, because he felt that it violated state statute. Director McDade had no additional information pertinent to this investigation. I did ask if we were in any way violating Assistant Chief Pelfrey's rights or confidentiality and she replied no because part of meeting with employees with concerns like Pelfrey's, was to discuss what he told them with his supervisor to try to resolve the problems and that there was no expectation of confidentiality. On April 10, 2018 at 0930 HRS. I met with Assistant Chief Micheal Pelfrey in relation to the insubordination complaint. He was permitted to read the complaint and witness statements. Pelfrey was then given a copy of Garrity which he read and signed indicating that he understood. I placed him under oath and took a taped sworn statement from him. Chief Pelfrey told me that the incident described in the complaint concerning a directive given to him by Chief Vespaya to speak with Captain Gary Arsenault about an incident at Knight's Trail gun range in which Vespaya observed an officer walking with a loaded firearm toward the firing line without a range instructor present, a violation of NPPD policy and range rules. He vaguely remembered and could not recall if he spoke to Arsenault as directed immediately, at a later time, or at all. He told me that the complaint does not state who the officer was in violation, or any particulars that might help him remember any more accurately. The second complaint was a directive given to Assistant Chief Pelfrey by Chief Vespaya to contact the captains and let them know he was going to open an IA investigation about a K9 incident and wanted them to get ahead of it. Pelfrey told me that he was taken aback by that directive since the chief had telephoned him in October while he was out of town attending a conference and at that time told Pelfrey at that time he was opening an IA. Pelfrey told me that as far as he knew the IA was already in progress. He related that he felt that since the IA had apparently already been opened, this directive was a direct violation of NPPD policy, the Officer Bill of Rights, and a first-degree misdemeanor under Florida statute. I asked Pelfrey if when he received the order, did he make his concerns known to Chief Vespaya. Pelfrey told me he did not. I inquired as to why he had not. Pelfrey told me that he would have to relate a backstory to help explain why he did not question Chief Vespaya. Pelfrey said that he thought maybe the chief could have been setting him up to be charged with interfering with IA investigation, which could lead to him being charged with a misdemeanor offense. The reason he felt this way was based upon his perception of the recent history between the chief and him extending back to last year. Assistant Chief Pelfrey told me that he had always had what he considered to be a very good working relationship with Chief Vespaya. Everything seemed to be working smoothly. Back in or around May of 2017, Chief Vespaya, Captain Morales, and he met in the captain's office and Vespaya asked him how much longer he planned on staying at the agency. Pelfrey described being surprised by the question and said he had never thought about it because he loved it here, but off the top of his head he would stay until he was 62 or 63 YOA. He said that Vespaya mused and said that that would have him leaving in 2019, the chief said he was retiring in 2020, and so that would give Vespaya a year to work with Captain Morales as the assistant chief. So, when he got ready to leave, Vespaya would make Captain Morales the new chief. Chief Vespaya impressed upon Pelfrey that when the new chief came in he was going to need Pelfrey's help getting acquainted with everyone and acclimated to the new agency and how we do things here. This remained the norm until Vespaya announced this fall that he was going to leave earlier than planned and became involved in the selection process for the replacement chief. Pelfrey told me that as soon as Vespaya learned that he, Pelfrey, applied for the chief's position, something changed immediately in their relationship. Initially, Vespaya would not speak to him. However, going forward Pelfrey told me that it seemed he could do nothing right in the chief's eyes. Every discussion turned into a debate. On more than one occasion, Vespaya had jumped to conclusions that Pelfrey had done something wrong, when he had not. E.g. accusing Pelfrey of moving a Spark representative into the investigations unit when that had not been done, and accusing him of incorrectly handling the captain promotion process, which caused Vespaya more work. When Pelfrey stated he followed the direction of Assistant City Manager Schult given in a meeting also attended by Vespaya, Captain Morales, Jennifer Ayers, Vespaya then charged that Pelfrey was also told to speak with HR about the process, implying that Pelfrey had not done so. When Pelfrey countered that he had indeed spoke with HR as instructed, the chief immediately changed subjects. On a frequent basis the chief would call Pelfrey into his office or visit Pelfrey in his office and ask him if he had an exit strategy planned. On January 30, 2018 Pelfrey and Vespaya had a meeting in which Vespaya asked him again if he had an exit strategy. Pelfrey asked him what he meant and Vespaya replied, "You know, when the new chief comes in he'll not want you here. You're old school and we're an applicant for chief and he'll not want you here." Pelfrey replied that he did not know why that was being discussed and asked Vespaya, "Am I being forced out or fired? Does Mr. Lear want me to leave?" Vespaya replied, "No, but you need to leave with me, the new chief will not want you here." Vespaya asked Pelfrey if he wanted to meet with the city manager, Pete Lear, and he replied that he did. The meeting with Lear, according to Pelfrey, went well and Lear told Pelfrey he did not need an exit strategy, but being straightforward, Pelfrey would not be the new chief or interim chief. Pelfrey went on to state that on numerous meetings through March 2018 Vespaya continuously brought up that Pelfrey needed to leave when Vespaya left and go out on top, stating, "Don't make me open an IA on you." Pelfrey inquired, "An IA for what?" He received no answer. Vespaya did tell him he was forgetful and that staff was being held to different expectations than him. On other occasions Pelfrey said that he felt he was being threatened by Vespaya or extorted because Vespaya told him that if he didn't agree to leave Vespaya would open an IA on him, it would become public record, and Stephanie Gibson might get the public records from it and Pelfrey wouldn't want his family to see all of that in print. Pelfrey went on to ask why Vespaya, if he felt Pelfrey had been insubordinate by not following his orders back in November, did he not confront him and deal with it at that time instead of holding it until April, months later after the fact. Now because Pelfrey had refused to leave voluntarily, Vespaya did as he had threatened and opened an IA. Pelfrey described another peculiarity, that from December through the end of January, Vespaya, who had been an absentee chief, was away on vacation but had left him, Pelfrey, as the acting chief. Why, if he had been such a substandard employee as Vespaya documented in his complaint, Would he trust him to run the agency for over a month? Pelfrey apologized for going on so long but said he needed to give me an idea of the background of what had been going on between the chief and him to explain why he didn't question Vespaya's directive when given it, because he felt it was a policy violation, unethical, and against the law. Pelfrey told me he dislikes confrontation and he was concerned of how Vespaya would react should he have questioned the directive, considering the way Vespaya had been treating Pelfrey since he announced applying for the chief's position. Pelfrey told me it was like Vespaya was angry all the time and tried to turn every meeting into a debate, even bringing up Pelfrey's elderly parents. Pelfrey closed by saying that he takes responsibility for not getting with Arsenault about the range, although he did speak with Commander Scott King, who was also in charge of training. He also takes responsibility for insubordination by not following the directive to notify the captains of an opening IA, but reasoned that he had been convinced the IA had already been opened and was trying to save the agency, the chief, and himself from any charges. Note: on April 10, 2018 at approximately 1300 HRS. I spoke with Captain Arsenault and asked him if Assistant Chief Pelfrey ever spoke to him about the incident at the Knights Trail Range. He told me that he did not recall ever talking with the Assistant Chief about it, but he did hear about the incident. On April 17, 2018 at 1700 HRS. I interviewed Kevin Vespaya regarding the testimony of Assistant Chief Micheal Pelfrey, who stated that while he did intentionally disobey a direct order from the chief, he felt that the chief had given him a directive which would have caused him to commit a misdemeanor of the first degree and a level 5 violation of Northport police policy, but was apprehensive about discussing it with Vespaya due to what he felt was the chief's antagonistic behavior toward him. I asked Vespaya if the testimony of Assistant Chief Pelfrey was accurate. Chief Vespaya told me that the backstory as related by Assistant Chief Pelfrey was not only inaccurate but Pelfrey had been untruthful while under oath. Vespaya produced documentation which he used to support one facet of the untruthfulness. Incident 1, Pelfrey had told me under oath that Chief Vespaya had telephoned him in Philadelphia in October and told him that he, Vespaya, was going to open an IA on the K9. Incident. Chief Vespaya told me that that statement was not true. He didn't know that he was going to open an IA until he conferred with Roy Bedard and the inspector. That decision wasn't made until November 1st. It should be noted that the IACP conference Pelfrey attended was from October 21st to 25th. Incident 2, Pelfrey stated under oath that he refused to follow the order given him by Vespaya to notify the captains that an IA was forthcoming so they could forewarn the troops and they were not blindsided. Pelfrey thought it was not only a violation of policy but a criminal violation since an IA was already opened. This too, according to Vespaya, was not truthful. Vespaya produced Assistant Chief Pelfrey's latest performance evaluation. On December 25, Pelfrey responded to a poor rating in one area concerning his failure to notify the captain of the upcoming IA, by writing that he was told it was an inquiry and had he told the troops it was inquiry and they then received the IA notice, it would have been considered to be a lie. This refutes Pelfrey's testimony that he thought an IA was already open. Incident 3, further, when Vespaya confronted Pelfrey for not having told the captain as directed, Pelfrey told him he forgot and was going to go take care of it that very moment. This too was being untruthful since by his own admission to the HR director and manager, as well to me under oath, he intentionally refused to obey the order given to him by Chief Vespaya. Incident 4, Chief Vespaya told me that contrary to Pelfrey's statement that the chief had mentioned on more than one occasion that Pelfrey needed to have an exit strategy to go out on top and that Pelfrey shouldn't force Vespaya to open an IA on him. Pelfrey alleges that this IA is the result of his refusal to resign. Vespaya said that he did ask Pelfrey if he had an exit strategy and suggested that he resign and leave with his dignity and good name. However, he also explained to Pelfrey that the IA he was talking about was for a discourtesy complaint from a citizen who had come into our lobby and was spoken to rudely by Pelfrey to such an extent that the citizen went to the city commission meeting and told of their treatment by Pelfrey. Further, Pelfrey had also apparently spoken discourteously to a citizen by telephone and had been demeaning to business manager Jennifer Ayres and assistant Rachel Burkett. Vespaya told me that he explained to Pelfrey that he was number 2 and he, the chief, shouldn't have to open an IA on him, and that Pelfrey should take the occasion as being counseled and not to let it occur again. This is completely contrary to the statement under oath given by Pelfrey. The other allegations by Pelfrey, while having no direct bearing on the policy violations outlined in this investigation, were also answered by Vespaya. Pelfrey asked while under oath if his lack of following an order was considered so egregious. Why did the chief wait 4 months later to open an internal investigation, implying it was part of the threat he perceived by Vespaya to leave on his own or be the subject of an IA? Vespaya told me that when he had confronted Pelfrey about disobeying his order to immediately go speak with the captains about the upcoming IA, Pelfrey told him that he had forgotten. So Vespaya, while not happy, accepted the excuse as being truthful, since according to Vespaya, Pelfrey had been found to have been forgetful on numerous occasions. However, months later, while attending a meeting with Human Resources over the failure to perform up to standards by Pelfrey, including his many incidents of forgetfulness, Vespaya was informed that Pelfrey had admitted to them that he intentionally did not obey the order. This made it insubordination. Further, Pelfrey had lied to the chief by telling him that he had simply forgotten. Vespaya pointed out to me another untruthful statement made by Pelfrey under oath. Pelfrey described the chief telling him that a new chief coming in would need him, Pelfrey, to help adjust and learn the Northport way of doing things. Vespaya said that never happened because Pelfrey himself still doesn't seem to grasp his position, doesn't know enough, and would be little if any help to a new chief, so Vespaya would never make that statement. Chief Vespaya also addressed an allegation made by Pelfrey that everything seemed to turn sideways, where he could do nothing right once he told Vespaya that he was putting his letter in for the soon-to-be vacant chief's position. Vespaya stated that too was untruthful. Pelfrey never told him that he put a letter in for the position. Vespaya learned it from an outside source and then went to speak to Pelfrey. Secondly, Chief Vespaya described that Assistant Chief Pelfrey has never performed to an acceptable level. The two have had many meetings discussing what Pelfrey needed to do to improve his work performance. Vespaya gave examples of the annual report being months behind 2 years in a row and various assignments not being completed, so that he, the chief, had to complete the assignments. He described Pelfrey as just not adapting to Northport way of doing things. He told me that he did tell Pelfrey that he was too old school and a new chief would probably not want him as the assistant. The agency is transitioning to a strong community policing mentality, which Pelfrey resists. I asked Chief Vespaya, concerning the IA insubordination charge, would he have been open to listen to Assistant Chief Pelfrey's concerns about his directive. He stated that certainly he would. He doesn't know everything, and if someone can point out something he was wrong about, he encourages it. Still listened. He also contradicted Pelfrey's description of Vespaya being so confrontational and angry that he was apprehensive to speak to him. Vespaya told me that Pelfrey has never seen him angry, disappointed in lack of performance maybe, but never angry. I asked Chief Vespaya if, as Assistant Chief Pelfrey described, he had opened this IA and developed a hostile relationship to intentionally force Micheal Pelfrey out of this agency. Vespaya replied absolutely not. Vespaya said that while Pelfrey was not performing at a level expected of a Northport police employee, especially an assistant chief, Pelfrey is personable, takes things to heart, and is a 30-plus year veteran. He said that he did everything he could to first give Pelfrey a chance to improve, and then when he continued not to show any improvement, a manner to leave this agency with his dignity intact. Vespaya told me that he also holds himself to high standards and is being paid to be the chief of police until his last day is over. He could not permit Pelfrey's insubordination to go unanswered. He finished by stating that he is extremely disappointed by Pelfrey's allegations, attempts to minimize his actions or lack thereof, and his obvious lying under oath. On April 26, 2018 at 1500 HRS. I re-interviewed Assistant Chief Micheal Pelfrey for clarification of the points alleged by former Chief Vespaya as being untruthfulness by Pelfrey. As for the allegation that the chief had telephoned Pelfrey in October and at that time told Pelfrey he was opening an IA, Pelfrey reaffirmed that contrary to what the chief said, he did indeed tell him that. I have no evidence to prove or disprove what was said over the telephone. However, Roy Bedard was not consulted about the dog bite case until October 20, 2017. He was in Oregon at the time and asked for the particulars on the case on October 23, 2017. The conference attended by Pelfrey ended October 25. Chief Pelfrey reaffirmed his initial statements to me and swears under oath he has not been untruthful. He counters that Chief Vespaya was untruthful in maintaining that he told Pelfrey about what incidents he could open an IA for, that Pelfrey was ever discourteous to staff. Pelfrey did acknowledge that he questioned the current budget process, which he felt was cumbersome and could be made so much smoother and easier, and business manager Jennifer Ayres took offense and she, Vespaya, and Pelfrey had to have a sit-down meeting to clear the air. He acknowledged that he had the same issue with Tammy Jacobs over police and accreditation, to which Jacobs took offense to anyone daring to question accreditation as managed by her, and that resulted in another meeting with Vespaya. Pelfrey told me that upon looking back, that was possibly when the relationship between Vespaya and he started deteriorating, because he dared to question Jacobs, who Pelfrey said the chief thinks highly of. Pelfrey also told me that Vespaya was untruthful, claiming he didn't know of any plan to make Captain Morales the assistant chief for a year, then name him chief as he, Vespaya, retired. In fact, Pelfrey stated that Vespaya moved up his timetable to retire as soon as he learned the city manager Lewis was leaving. Pelfrey stated that Vespaya's statement of "he's never seen me angry" was untrue. He said that if Vespaya's actions weren't that of someone incensed and angry, he didn't know what was. That Vespaya tried to find fault in everything he did and made accusations that as soon as Pelfrey had a valid response, would quickly change the topic and move on to something else. Pelfrey brought up another fact that was evident on the evaluation. That Chief Vespaya rated him as highly effective for most of the categories and proficient as the worst. Pelfrey said that it contradicted Vespaya's description of him as a poor performer. I went over each incident of untruthfulness pointed out by former Chief Vespaya by Assistant Chief Pelfrey. As a result, I learned that the allegations of who said what to whom is a he said versus he said set of situations. It appears to be totally opposing recollections by two respected administrative officers and is subjective as to which version one believes. There is no solid evidence to prove or disprove either person's perceptions or prove wanton untruthfulness, save for one incident. Assistant Pelfrey originally told me and reaffirmed in this second interview that he committed an act of intentional insubordination by refusing to follow the order of the chief regarding the K-9 notification because he was convinced that an IA had been opened. When I produced his annual evaluation written a month after the incident, and showed Pelfrey where he wrote that Chief Vespaya, verbally depicted to me as being an inquiry. It contradicts his statements under oath and to both HR Manager Deborah Hope and HR Director Christine McDade that he believed it was an open IA. Upon asking Pelfrey for clarification about that, he responded that it's a matter of semantics because Chief Vespaya used the terms inquiry, IA, investigation all interchangeably with all meaning the same thing. So as far as he was concerned, he thought it was an IA. I found this response to be questionable in that Pelfrey's written response on his annual evaluation continues when the notices to the officer, S, were distributed. The letter was titled Internal Affairs Investigation and the Garrity Statement, which was not how it was portrayed to me to get in front of. If I had told the officers it's only an inquiry, it would be viewed as a lie. This appears to be convincing evidence that not once but twice in the same paragraph, Assistant Chief Pelfrey swears that the Chief Vespaya told him to let the captains know an inquiry was coming, not the open IA that Pelfrey has testified as a justification for insubordination. That renders his testimony in that regard as untruthful. On the violation 701.02, v. 17, to wit, untruthfulness in an official proceeding, Level 5 violation, there is evidence that one statement made under oath by Assistant Chief is not truthful. While all the other alleged untruthful statements are again, he said. The statement that he was insubordinate because he thought an IA case was open and he would be in violation by following the order, Pelfrey clearly wrote a month later on his evaluation that he was told by Chief Vespaya that he was opening an inquiry and, Pelfrey, believed it to be an inquiry. Although Chief Pelfrey offers in his defense that Chief Vespaya used inquiry, administrative investigation, and IA investigation interchangeably, Pelfrey never attempted to clarify what Vespaya meant. While I have no evidence that this was intentional, it still is on record, evaluation and sworn statement. Therefore, I recommend a finding of sustained. On the first violation of Policy 701.02, v. 34, insubordination, Level 4 offense. For failure to discuss with Captain Arsenault an incident occurring at Knight's Trail gun range, there is no evidence to prove or disprove that the directive from Chief Vespaya was intentionally disobeyed by Assistant Chief Pelfrey, or was a case of accidental oversight. Pelfrey, while admitting that he did not speak with Captain Arsenault, did discuss the matter with Commander King, who is also in charge of the training/range function. Therefore, lacking corroborating evidence, I recommend a finding of not sustained. On the second violation of Policy 701.02, v. 34, insubordination, Level 4 offense. For failure to obey a directive from Chief Vespaya to immediately speak with the agency captains to inform them of an upcoming internal affairs investigation being open to review the K9 incident, 2017-12, with the purpose to ease any angst among the members involved, there is sufficient evidence, that being an admission under oath by Assistant Chief Pelfrey that he knowingly and intentionally did refuse to carry out that order. Therefore, I recommend a finding of sustained. Additional information/evidence. 1. Typed signed notes from meetings between Assistant Chief Pelfrey and Chief Vespaya. 2701.02, 108, b. Progressive discipline chart. 3. Partial annual evaluation. Micheal Pelfrey. I, the undersigned, do hereby swear, under penalty of perjury, that, to the best of my personal knowledge, information, and belief, I have not knowingly or willfully deprived, or allowed another to deprive, the subject of the investigation of any of the rights contained in SS 112.532 and 112.533, Florida statutes. ___________insp W Micheal Koval #330 _____05/01/2018 Investigator date. Police use who may want to retaliate against him physically.
Hey Charlotte County, this is Charlotte County COPWATCH, and I just wanted you to know that I am using this stuff under fair use, and also remember to like and subscribe this channel. Also too, keep in mind I do not make any money on YouTube. This is 5 hours work a day, you know, fighting for freedom. And you can donate with PayPal and Patreon. I just want you to think about this. If everybody gives to PayPal and Patreon, Patreon is every month. Actually, PayPal you can do every month. I have 12,000 subscribers. If everybody gives, I can quit my regular job and go full-time investigations on Charlotte County and possibly even more and beyond. So just keep that in mind. If everybody helps out, I can go full-time doing this. Thanks.